Hi all, welcome to the Business Analyst Training Program. In our previous session, we have seen details pertaining to the software requirement specification. How different is software requirement specification compared to the BRD document, business requirement document? What are the various details that should go into the BRD document and the SRS document? What do you mean by the data dictionary? What are the various topics that should go into your SRS document? How do you identify data elements? How do you capture the data types for each of the data elements? Also, I have explained to you what is a data flow diagram, logical data flow model diagram, and a state transition diagram that should go into your analysis model. In the state transition, prior to the state transition diagram, you have to define the types of interfaces. So we have seen different types of interfaces, functional requirements and quality attributes that should be described as a part of the SRS document. The limitation up to which it has to be defined in the SRS document to give a completion to the data modeling or the software requirement specification part of the program. We will see how to create the data flow diagram, and then I will give you an explanation for data flow model diagram, how to create that, and you can take that as an assignment. So we will begin with the data flow diagram. Many of them think data flow diagram is complex because of the number of connectors that you have to create. Data flow diagram is not complex. The number of diagrams that you have to, the number of connectors that you have to create within the data flow diagram, or the data flow diagram itself can be divided into the entire system based data flow, and then user characteristics based data flow, and dependency systems based data flow. Okay, so we will begin with the data flow diagram. That we will do next. This is the data flow diagram. This is the first one to be completed. So now let us see how to achieve or how to create this diagram. Open an instance of Visio. So your theoretical understanding of what is a data flow diagram must be defined diagrammatically, similar to the representation that you're seeing here. For that, you'll have to add the data flow diagram shapes. Software, within software you have the data flow diagram shapes. First, add the data process, which is the center process, cafeteria, ordering, system. Okay, so this is the center process. Bold the text. You can also increase the font size if you want this to be highlighted. So once you have added the center part, you can increase the size of it so that you can get a number of points to add the connector. Curved connector is what you're going to use in the DFD diagram or the data flow diagram. Okay. Now add the interactors. So different types of interactors. So here we're going to define the user interactor. This is for patron. First we will finish pattern and then so increase the spacing on the top. Now add the connectors. So throughout you will be working on curved line connectors, connector, curved lines. Add the connector, click on the connector and add the connectors. You can use different points to which it connects. So you have to bring this to a smooth line surface. That is the challenging part of a data flow diagram. Otherwise it's going to be much easier. And also you have to minimize the usage of number of points. Okay. As much as possible you have to keep it as a curved line. So generally, do you see this small dotted green line? So that you have to extend as much as you want. So keep it curved. Okay. So this is the menu. Payroll deduction registration. Menu order, menu changes. Okay. So from the cafeteria ordering system, it goes to the pattern. Pattern is nothing but the employee. From the employee, the registration takes place on the COS system. And then from the employee, any order change or menu change also takes place. First part is completed. In the second part, define another external interactive. Make sure the spacing is even. Spacing between your data process and the external extractor, external interactor. Place it in the center. The spacing should be the same. Cafeteria staff. Click on the design curved lines. Add the curved lines. Adjust it. Once you slightly move, you will get the green dot pointer. That is the catch there. So you have to look for this small green circle with a dot within it, right? Next, this is for meal order. Add another point. One more. So once you get hold of a point, it's going to be easier. You can also change the starting point of the point. So in a DFD diagram, you should always buy some buffer time because these connectors could be challenging. Okay, it can take some time for you to complete. Meal order, and it should be a smooth line as much as possible. Meal order, status, update, delivery request, payment request. Okay. Next you have the meal deliverer. So before that, complete the connectors. All other connectors that's all. Next you have the meal deliverer. So mostly you will be working on data process and external interactor. Okay. So this is for meal deliverer. Add the connector. So once you select a curved line connector, it will remain in the same type. Delivery confirmation. This is for the cafeteria ordering system data flow that we have seen. Okay. Delivery request. Next you have the cafeteria inventory system. So this is a system interactor. Okay. Cafeteria inventory system. Keep it as a smooth connector. So up to the time you get it as a smooth connector, you have to work on it. Okay, always make sure there is a hint. There are two types of green dots that you will see. When you click on the connecting line, you have a circle filled with complete green color, and another one is semicircle or a circle with a smaller dot within the circle. So always connect from the external interactor to the data process so that you get the dot connector sitting right on the data process. So that's what is going to help you move your connecting point like this. Okay, this is going to be easier. Keep it a smooth connector as much as possible. That's all. This is going to be, one is for food item order. Another one is food item availability information. You can use the yellow square that I've already told you to adjust the placing of these. Okay. Next, you have the payroll system and menu manager. So add another external interactor. So for both user characteristic and system dependency, you will use the same external interactor. Payroll system. Excuse me. Drag the dots. Adjusting the dots is the most challenging part. That's what could take a little time with the DFD diagram. It's not very straightforward, similar to the other diagram. So you can use this. So whenever you see a longer line like this, you can use this to adjust. Payroll deduction registration request. Payroll deduction response. Payment request. Next you have the menu manager. So always make sure you use a pointer tool. You're on the pointer tool when you move the shapes. Otherwise, it could create unnecessary problems. Okay. Add the connector. This is pretty much straightforward. It's for menu manager. Okay. This is the completed diagram. Must be a straight line. See, this is the problem. You have to adjust it properly. So you have seen the effort that you have to put to create DFT diagram with 4 user and 2 system interfaces. Okay. So you have to make sure you have enough time to do this. It cannot be quickly completed. So always take at least 2 or 3 hours of time. If it's bigger diagram, take 1 or 2 days to complete the DFT in a proper way and submit. It should be very much presentable. Okay. You can't have it in different ways of methods or different styles of doing it. You have to have that as a curved line connector. You can't create your own method of straight lines or right angles. It's not the correct practice. Add the title. Don't forget to add the title. So you know how to add the title. I'm just copy pasting it here. Give the drawing number. So this is drawing number 1. Okay, save the drawing. So what is this called? It's called a data flow diagram. In short, you can also refer this to as DFD. Generally, they refer this to as a DFD diagram. DFD diagram is mainly used to define the data model along with the logical data model. Okay. So with this, we cover a major part of the SRS data model type. So in this, you have start state, end state. So generally, if there is a data storage, you can use the double line. Here you don't use any cylindrical representation. You have to use a double line for any database activities. Any objects that you use, you have to use the object symbol. Mostly we stick on to these. Dynamic connector is nothing but your connector, curved line connector. That's all. So the other ones are easier ones. So you don't have to worry much about it. Data process, external, interactor, and data store. Okay, these are the most commonly used shapes to define the data flow diagram. Any questions? Next, we will see the data flow model diagram. Data flow model diagram is much more easier when compared to the data flow diagram. Save the diagram. In a data flow model diagram, the number of shapes that you use are lesser. Process, interface, data store, data flow. There are only 4 shapes. So data flow is your connector. So excluding the data flow, you just have 3 shapes: process, interface, and data store. Okay. Process is a rounded rectangle. Interface is a sharp edge rectangle. Data store is a sharp edge rectangle but 3-sided. You have only 3 shapes here. Other than that, you have the connectors to connect these shapes. Okay. Process, that's a selling item process. Display all the selling item. From where the items get listed, it should get listed from the item file data store. Next you have the data store basket. For each item sold, that is the process, it should go into the basket. For each item that gets added, the shopping basket or the shopping cart must get updated. So again, update the basket. So update basket is another data store. Data storage is nothing but it can be a database or a data warehouse. Next you have print receipt, update item stock. That's the process. What happens once the item gets updated? Update item file, data store gets refreshed. Basket emptied. When the items are, this order has been placed, the basket gets emptied. After the order gets placed, the basket, so initially it is an empty basket. As the items are ordered, for each of the items sold, the basket gets updated. And finally, once the checkout is done with the payment, basket is emptied. Finally, system downloaded receipt is the process. Okay. So that's about the data store and different types of processes. So you can take this as an example and work through as an assignment and submit it. Just look at this diagram, try to understand. It's very easy. Okay, you have only 3 shapes. One is to define the process. Another one, if there are any interfaces, it can be a system interface, mainly a software interface, communication interface, or any type of an interface. So when you display all the selling items, when you display all the items that are available in your stores for sales, so you have to use an interface. Wherever there is a storage involved, data store should be used. That's all you have to represent in the data flow model diagram. Okay, generally companies prefer DFD diagrams. Very rarely they use data flow model diagram. And so I've given an example to you so that you're aware of what is a data flow model diagram and you don't miss out on that concept. It's very easy to create. So that's the completion of data modeling part. Do you have any questions for me? Next, we are moving to BA techniques. Okay, so let's move on to the BA techniques. In the BA techniques, the very first thing we're going to see is the XML structure and diagram. So what is an XML file? So you must know the definition of what is XML. Okay, so we have a sample XML. Okay, so this is the sample XML. XML file is very much similar to your text file. So far we have been talking about the backend. Data will be in a database. How is it stored? It's stored in tables, different tables. Tables are related. Correct? What if the data has to be stored in some other format, not in a database format? Supposing you're working on an open office automation in MS Word or Excel. All Office applications support open office automation. So when you have these kind of applications, the data mainly comes from the backend, not through a database, but it comes from XML file. Not only for MS Office automations, be it .NET automations, .NET way of working. Even there, you need the XML files and DOM programming. In XML, the data is stored in nodes, parent node, child node, and then you have subchild nodes, many other child nodes related to the parent child node. So what happens is different types of nodes are defined in the XML, and based on the node definitions, the data gets stored. Okay, for example, let me open Paint. So the first level is a parent. Next you have children for this parent. Next, children for this parent. Second level. Okay. So if you would have studied file structure in your academics, this is what they actually define. So number of children. It can be a number of children represented. Correct? So this is level 1, level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3. There's nothing complex. It's very easy to understand. So it's like a tree. Correct? This is the main part of the tree. And then you have a stem, and then you have branches, and then you have leaves. So that's the method in which, so if you see here, starting from level 0, it gets connected. So this is all connected. So this child again has multiple children. This one has again multiple children. So number of children can depend on the number of data elements that you have to define. So this is P0, P0, and then you have child level 1. So in level 1 you have all children's in level 1. This is children 2, child, it's called a child, and this is child 3. Okay, so this is how the tree structure is defined. So each and every circle that you see here is a node. Email is a node, parent node. Within the parent node you have child nodes. So you have 2 from heading and body. So these are child nodes. So what is the structure we have in the first XML written here? The first XML is only of level 0 and level 1. So level 0 is your parent node, and level 1, from level 1 the child node starts. Okay, that's all. Next one is the meeting node. In the meeting parent node you have child nodes that include date, subject and location. Okay, so to read how the data is going to be read, if it is in a tabular format, if it is in a rows and column format, it's very easy to read the data. Correct? If it is in a different format, how will you read the data? It is read using DOM programming. In DOM programming, each and every node of XML is read. When we call a node, what is a node? Understand this clearly. There is a parent node, there's a child node. Within child nodes, you can have subchild nodes. So this is the first level of parent node, then first level of child node. Within the first level of child node, one child can have n number of children, right? So in the same way, in 2, you can have subchild nodes. So we don't call it subchild node, they call child nodes or children nodes. So within 2, you can have another set of recipients. So recipient name, correct? So within an email ID, what can you find? Recipient, right? Next, you have recipient email. This is going to be email ID and close the recipient. Always when you open a node, you must close the node. Finally, you can't close to here. When you have child node within the parent node, you must close to externally, right? After defining and closing all the child nodes, only then you can close the parent node. That is the ruling of XML. So now what is the structure you have? You have email at parent level. 2 is the first child level, and this child has 2 children, recipient name, and then you have the recipient email. Okay, and then you have to close 2. Right? Then again you can have multiple child nodes. So what is happening here? You started with the parent node email, you moved on to the child node 2, you moved on to sub children nodes, recipient name and recipient email ID. You close the child node. Next. So this child is going to have set of other children. But do you have to define that again? No. So you're moving back to level 1 of child. From, do you have any subchilds? No. Heading, any subchildren to be defined? No. Body, it's a plain node structure, child node structure. Okay. With that, you define the first set of parent nodes. So all these children and subchildren that you define here, it should go under the same parent node, that's email. Meeting, you stop with 2 levels, parent level and child level. So how to read this data? Data is available, correct? But how to read the data? Now this is going to be Lakshmi. Next, email ID, Lakshmi at something.com. Right? So how this data is going to be read? It's going to be read from node to node level using DOM programming. In DOM programming, parent node is read. Then the child nodes are looped. Each and every child node is read within the parent node. So within child node, also you will check if there are any sub-children nodes that are defined. Okay. So that's about the parent node and the child node. So you don't have to worry about DOM programming, how do they write, how do they read the node structure, etc. All that you must know is how the XML is created, what is a parent node, what is a child node. And for more information on XML, I have given a link here to the W3 schools. You can go through this information. Okay. Fine. So with that, we complete the XML structure. What is XML and the appearance or how the XML lines of code are written. The definition within the node is not specific to any programming. It depends on the data, the type of data that you use. It can be an email, to, recipient, from, any type of data. If you're working on customer data, it's going to be customer node. Within the customer node, you have customer name, customer ID, customer address. Within the customer address, what can be the sub-children defined? The number, lane, avenue, which county. So all these details can be defined in the customer address. Okay. Now we will see how to represent the XML structure. It is not only creating the XML structure, at times you have to also represent the XML structure diagrammatically. So learning XML structure representation helps you in 2 ways. One is to define the XML and the second one is tree view flowchart. Tree view flowchart is very much similar to the XML structure. except for in XML structure, you will define the parent and child node. In a tree view structure, or I'm sorry, in a tree view flowchart, you will be defining hierarchy based information. What is the hierarchy on the top? What are the sub hierarchies, and what are the other hierarchies to be defined under that, right? Open an instance of Visio. Click on view page width. So you need the basic shapes. Add basic shapes under general, rectangle. Give some space on the top for explaining what the node structure is. Email node, correct? That's the first node that we have seen. Next, you have the sub nodes to be defined. To node, from node, heading node, and then you have the body node. So what are these? These are the child nodes. Within the child node, you can have sub-children, and those children can again have sub-children nodes represented. This is a name node. So you have to reduce the size of the font accordingly. So if the first one level is, so you can keep this at 9. This is second level, first level, second level, third level. Third level is even smaller font, just to differentiate. Price node, to node. So you can have different types of nodes there. Okay. Name node, price node, email ID node. Just an example of how you can do it. Next, you can also have subnodes, but before that you have to define the connector. So on the connector, how do you get this horizontal line? That's another challenging part you have to understand. You have to use a line to do that. Search line, use a lateral line. Drag the lateral line. And now back to stencils, that's all. So once you've added a lateral line, you can easily add the connecting lines. Bottom to top, not from top to bottom, bottom to top. Here you don't have to use any arrow marks, so that's another easier thing. So you need another lateral line here. Copy, paste, rotate it, and reduce the size. So once you have added, you can copy paste it anytime. So here you can have another node. So one is a food color node. Increase or decrease the size. Food quantity node. Okay. So you can adjust the spacing here. Okay. This is a completed diagram. Only thing you have to do is represent the node names. So click on type text. So first one is the parent node. Select the text and reduce the size. And you also know how to turn it, right? So adjust the direction in which it is represented. This is a parent node. So you can start your parent node at level L0 and then move on, or L1 is also fine to use. There's nothing wrong about it. Next is the child node. Slightly adjust this. Child node is going to be at level 1. You can also use a left brace to represent, just like this. You can decrease the width of it. Next you have child node. Is going to be at level 3. Okay. Then you have to add the text. So what is this? This is the XML node structure representation. It's very easy to do. Just add text boxes, that's all. One or two text boxes as per your need. And then the text that should be defined. Okay. Then give the number, drawing number. That's all. Save your drawing. So what is this? This is the XML diagram. XML structure diagram. XML is a very important file type because it's portable in nature. It's very easy to move the data, and also the size of the file will be lesser, though you have huge volume of data stored in it. That's the best part of using XML. You can open an XML file using Notepad or Notepad++. That is a new tool that is available, which is very much similar to Notepad. It's called Notepad++. You can download it. It's an open source. What do you mean by an open source tool? Open source software means free of cost. There is no license. There is no payment that you have to do for using those softwares. So those are referred to as open source tools. Okay. Next, you have the tree view flowchart. Tree view flowchart is very much similar. I'm not going to repeat tree view flowchart because it's just like your XML structure. So if you see here, so it is just like your XML. Parent node and child node. This is what you've seen in XML. Whereas in tree view flowchart, this is the information that you will see. The parent node, child node and subchild node. But here it is not the data. Here it is a hierarchical representation of, it can be a procedure, it can be a process, it can be a flow in a system, it can be a workflow to be defined in a software, anything. Plan, gather requirements, data identification and migration plan. Next, within migration plan, you have determine migration team, determine timing of migration, generate data templates, design mapping, develop test plan. Okay. So these are the sub data that has to be defined here. These are not nodes. Okay. That's just a flow. It can be a process flow or a system flow that you have to represent in a hierarchical method. The first level, second level, third level. So it's similar to your subdivisions, right? Main division, subdivision, then other subcategories within the subdivision. Something like that. The representation of the method of creating this diagram is very much similar to the XML diagram, except for there you call it as nodes. Here it is the plain data. Department hierarchy. First is the head of the department. Then you have senior managers, managers, assistant managers, team leads, and then senior software engineers, and junior analysts. So what is this hierarchy of team structure? But there is a different type of a diagram in Visio to achieve this. That's called the organization flowchart. Okay. That's called the organization flowchart. Any questions? I want you to take this as an assignment and work through it, similar to data flow model diagram. User story with acceptance criteria. We have already seen what is a user story and what is an acceptance criteria in the past. So just as a brush up, it's a very important technique that you must know as a business analyst. Okay. So if you look at the user story Excel file, user story is the name of the file. Open that. So here you have the user stories and personas. Persona is mainly used to define the background of the story that you're going to talk about. So user story is a story that which is told to you by the end user or the actual requirement that the end user gives you. So that's called the user story. And then you have the persona. So in the persona, you're talking about the background of the problem, and the user story is the actual story that defines each and every part of the persona that you're talking about. So here you have a working professional who wants to buy clothes online. The working professional is always connected to the internet through multiple devices. Correct? So what is a user story? That's a background. The user story is whenever an order is being placed in a device, it should store the order which has been created, though it is not completed, and it can be in the same day or a different day, or the same device or different devices. The end user must be able to complete the order, draft order. So every 5 seconds, the draft order must get saved automatically, irrespective of the device that is used. Right? So that was one of the stories we have seen. Next, how to create a user story in a system, in a software. That's what you're going to see here. So in a software or a system, the user story should contain the user story ID, name, value statement, acceptance criteria, and definition of done. Correct? So I've explained to you each and every part of this. User story for withdrawing cash from ATM. So if there's only one scenario, how do you handle? If there are multiple scenarios for your user story, then how do you handle that? Scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3, and so on. So for withdrawing cash from the ATM, scenario 1, account has sufficient funds. Scenario 2, account has insufficient funds. Scenario 3, the card has been disabled. Okay, so these are different types of scenarios. Account has sufficient fund. The account balance is $100 and user is trying to withdraw $20. ATM dispenses $20 and it shows the remaining is $80. It's a straightforward scenario. There isn't anything complex about it. Next, you have scenario 2. In scenario 2, there's insufficient fund. So when there's insufficient fund, there are only $10. User requests for $20. ATM gives an error. Card is withdrawn. Card has been disabled. In such a scenario, when the end user tries to withdraw money, the card is withheld within the ATM machine. The card doesn't come out. It's retained in the machine. So these are the different scenario-based user stories that you can define. User stories can be created in MS Word, MS Excel, or you can also create this using user story softwares. In-house softwares. Your company can have a simple web-based tool that is created for you to, or it can be a standalone tool. You have to just open it. Automatically the user story ID will get populated. You don't have to repeat it again and again, and it is specific to project, right? For each and every project there will be a user ID automatically generated. If you have an in-house tool, it is very, very easy because you can just enter the text and save it. Any questions? So that was a brush up about the user story. Next, we have to see process mapping, data mapping. We will see what is the difference between process mapping and data mapping. Open the process mapping Excel file. So in the process mapping Excel file, you have two different types of processes. So here we will talk about a sales process and HR process. First we will understand the HR process, which is much easier. Then we will move on to the sales process. Okay. So what do you mean by process mapping? The set of activities have to be divided into sub-processes. Sub-processes getting defined under the process. So the main process is called HR activity, the HR process. So within HR, you have recruitment and candidate hiring. Right? First, sourcing the candidate's profile, calling them for an interview is the recruitment part. Then it moves on to the sub-process. Within getting a candidate hired, HR hiring process. That should be the actual term here. This is HR hiring process, right? So what happens when you get hired by a company? The entire process is divided into recruitment and candidate hiring. So in the recruitment, candidate's profile is selected and then the candidate details get picked by the HR, reviewed by the HR, candidate is contacted, called for an interview arrangements are done. Candidate's interview results are positive. Negative, candidate gets rejected. Recruitment process completes if the candidate is rejected. If the candidate is a select, it moves to the candidate hiring. So what are the various sub-processes there? Candidate hiring includes hire the candidate, issue offer letter, candidate's response to the offer letter, and other different sub-processes. So the HR hiring process is divided into two. One is recruitment, another one is the candidate hiring. Within recruitment, what are the various sub-processes that you have to follow? Source the resume, publish the job opening, candidates apply for the job, collect candidate resumes, shortlist the resumes. So these are the various activities that are performed under source the resume sub-process. Send interview call letter. Contact the candidate. Check the candidate interest level to attend the interview. Send interview call letter to the candidate. Update the schedule and inform the manager. So that's about send interview call letter. Candidate interview process. Arrange people, place and materials required to conduct the interview. Receive the candidate and send them to the manager. Receive the candidate means once they come to your company, you have to greet them and take them. You know, most of the time what happens, we all go for an interview to a company. We have the point of contact come to the reception and take us to the manager or to the meeting room where the interview is going to be conducted. Interview is carried out. Candidate performance in the interview is documented. Interview outcome is informed to the candidate. Okay. The next part is candidate hiring. Hire the candidate. If the interview result is successful, then hire the candidate. Otherwise, it stops with the recruitment process. Ask for the expected salary. Negotiate and finalize the salary. Inform the management about the finalized salary expected. Sometimes it could be beyond the band, right? So they are hired for a particular level, but their salary expectation could be much, much higher because of their niche skill sets, advanced skill sets or expertise that they possess, that they have gained. Carry on with the offer letter process. Once you get the management's approval, okay, please go ahead and give them whatever is the expected salary because that's a very critical need and we have to hire the resource. So carry on with the offer letter process. So after the offer letter process is done, the next is issue offer letter. Create the offer letter. Get candidate's final agreement with it. Prepare the offer letter on the company letterhead. Get the offer letter signed by the higher authority. Generally, HR manager, HR director signs the offer letter. Send a soft copy, email communication to the candidate. Then the candidate comes to the company and signs the offer letter, hard copy if there is a need. Candidate's response to the offer letter. Candidate accepts the offer letter. Candidate gives the joining date. Candidate joins the company. Candidate undergoes the induction process. Candidate produces documents. Registers on all employee portals. Candidate collects the company ID card. Within a week it has to be done, right? So they have to swipe the ID card everywhere they move around in the company. Candidate moves to the floor for starting work. Okay. So this is how the entire process, the main process is called HR hiring process, and that itself is divided into two. One is the recruitment and candidate hiring. Next you have sub processes: source the resume, send interview call letter, and candidate interview process. Next, candidate hiring includes hire the candidate, issue offer letter, and candidate's response to the offer letter. Correct? Within that you have different tasks performed in the process. So this is very much similar to your BPMN diagram, business process model notation. So what is the need for process mapping? You have to group all the steps in a process together. So how do you do that? You have to do that by creating a process mapping and grouping each and every step, procedure or a task. You can call it with any term, but that should be grouped correctly under sub processes, main processes, right? So this is a very simple step, recruitment and candidate hiring or HR hiring process on the whole. But there are few processes which are very, very complex and a lot of procedures are involved. So there, process mapping is going to really help you, be it a smaller process or a bigger process. Process mapping is very, very handy and it will surely help you. Okay. Next, we will see the sales process mapping. Now, so far we have seen the HR division, how the processes are mapped within the HR division. So generally you will create a process map and then you will create a basic flow chart or BPMN diagram to represent the existing process flow. So within a sales department, how can you define the processes and sub-processes? So here you have winning new business and contracting. Sales process is divided into two sub-processes. One is winning new business and another one is contracting. So under winning new business, what are all the various steps that you have to follow? Approach, verification, proposal. Next you have preparation, negotiation and execution. Okay. Winning new business. So under that main process, you have the sub-process approach. So what is the approach? Collect profile data, approach letter, contact CEO and schedule meeting, conduct meeting, capture information and next steps to be followed, right? Then you have to complete the method of how you define. So once you're done with that, the next step is going to be verification. For verification, data collection process, and in the data collection, you have to analyze the data. So that's called correct value analysis, complete verification. Right? Okay, so far we have been discussing about the sales process. So here, after verification, you have to move on to the proposal stage. First, you create an approach of how do you deal with a client, how do you approach a client, and then you verify the various details that you have to discuss with the client. What is the information that they are looking for from a project point of view? Later, you give them a proposal. What can be done from your end? What are the various business arrangements that you have to do? What is a verbal agreement that you have to get from the CEO? And how do you create the business summary? So all these details have to be collected based on the discussion that you're going to have with your client. Next, once the approach is done, you have verified the information to be shared and you have had the first level of discussion, the proposal discussion with your client. The next level is the contracting. In contracting, you have to work on preparing the contract, negotiating the quote and execution of it. Right? When you talk about quote, Quote, that is the spelling of it. Quote means what is the pricing. So when you're working for sales and marketing, you must be familiar. So as a business analyst, you will get to work with the sales and marketing team as well. So you must be thorough with the concept pertaining to the quote, how a quote is generated, how a contract is written, and how do you negotiate and how do you work on the service level agreements, right? First, you have to prepare the contract. When you prepare the contract, you must be good with the pricing part of it. So you have to be competitive at the same time. You cannot have a margin which is beyond the market standards unless and until you have something very, very special which other companies do not have. If you quote a very high price, then there is a possibility of losing the contract completely. Negotiation. How do you negotiate? Obtain the client feedback, coordinate negotiations, produce modified contract draft. So you have quoted around $200,000. So you have to have a discussion about it and say, why are you quoting so much and how good is that compared to the market price? Is that lesser or more? Or if it is more, why do you have to quote a little more than the market price? So you have to negotiate. Do the client agree with what you have quoted, etc. Next is the execution part of it. Receive contract and distribute for internal signature. Distribute executed contract. Update contract system. Provide information to utilities as needed. Right? Finally, once the contract has been negotiated, contract document has been generated, the next step is you have to execute the contract. So with that, the contract signature process ends and the project comes to the business analyst and the project manager. So that's the sales process mapping that you must understand. Next, within sales process mapping or HR process mapping, or be it any type of a process mapping, you can either use just the theoretical method of defining the process, dividing the processes into sub-processes and other tasks within the sub-processes, or you can also do that diagrammatically. If you have to do it diagrammatically, whatever you are defining as the sub-process headings, so all those sub-process headings have to be defined in the sales process mapping. So sub-process headings should go into each of these definitions. Okay. So once the sub-process headings have been defined in the diagram, then you can take each of those headings and you can create the tasks and subtasks pertaining to each of those sub-processes and define it. Okay. So that's how you can diagrammatically present it. So we have seen two different processes in process mapping. One is the HR process and another one is the sales process. Next, we have the data mapping. In data mapping, you must know how to map data from one system to another system. SQL Server, Oracle and MySQL. SQL Server is a system which you are working on. It's a database which you are working on, relational database management system. Oracle is an internal application-based RDBMS from which the data should be fetched. MySQL is another relational database management system from which the data should be fetched. MySQL mainly contains the external or third-party application data. So how do you map data fields? Data elements are converted into data fields when it comes to Excel or other related systems. Right? In database also, it's referred to as a data field or a column. So in SQL Server RDBMS, if the title of the data element is document title, then Oracle is the next RDBMS. The name of the field in Oracle is title and MySQL is title. In SQL Server, if the name of the field is project management, in Oracle, it's going to be PRJ name. In MySQL, it's going to be project underscore name. Project number. In SQL Server, if you're creating a column or a data element called project number, which is just going to contain the project number. In Oracle, it's going to have the name PRJ NBR, and in MySQL, it's going to have the name project underscore number. Right? Document reviewed by whom? Document review date. Revision letter of document. So these are all various fields that you can define in your system. And when you are mapping the data field, data element in your system with data fields or elements in other systems, it can be an flat file, it can be an Excel file, it can be an XML file, right? CSV file, TSV file, different types of file systems or other types of databases. So there should be a mapping between the field name that you are defining to the data elements or the field names that are defined in the other systems or in other flat files. It's all the same. What you're trying to do is you're trying to collate the data from different systems. So that's what is referred to as data mapping. It is very, very important because what you define should be mapped against other systems, right? Do you have any questions about process mapping and data mapping? These two are very important topics and there may be questions pertaining to these topics. So these are BA techniques. So next. We are done with process mapping and data mapping. Table design in Excel. So most of us know how to create data in Excel. So we're going to see the Excel features in detail. But for now, try to understand what is a table in Excel. So generally, when you represent the data in Excel, how do you type data? So we are all used to subject, marks. So what are these? These are referred to as columns. And these are referred to as rows. Okay, so what is the name? Some name, and you give the age, and what is the subject? The subject is going to be marketing management. So in marketing management, what is the score? Next you have this, and what is the subject? Operations research. So in operations research, what is the score that the candidate has obtained? So similar to this, you can have different subjects, right? So sales, production management. So these are all management related subjects, right? So 25 years, 24 years, all in the same range. So what are you trying to do now? You're trying to create tabular format of data, right? So this is a tabular format of data. All that is horizontally represented in Excel is referred to as a row. All that is vertically represented in Excel is referred to as a column. So what is the main difference between this row and column? The point at which a row and a column intersects. So G and 10. So this intersecting point, this particular cell is referred to as G10. That is the address of this cell. So it's called a cell, C-E-L-L. These are referred to as vertical, ones are referred to as columns. Horizontal representations are rows. The point at which the vertical and horizontal, a row and a column intersects, is referred to as a cell. And how do you address? Like you have an address for your residence, same way you should have an address for each and every cell. So the cell address here is G10. Okay. So that is the cell address. Now, if you have to convert this tabular representation of data into a table. So select the data and then insert table. Click on OK. So the data that you've selected is now converted into a table. So what is the benefit of converting into a table? Supposing you have additional names or fields added, this together will be treated as a table, and there are specific formulas which have to be applied on a table. The table itself is considered as a complete table that you can define in a database. So this is the simplest table that you can create in Excel. Generally, we don't create these kind of tables unless and until you want to use formulas like D average, D sum, D count. Okay, those are advanced levels of using formulas in Excel. We stick on to the standard method of creating a tabular format of data. This is more than enough to work in Excel. The data is represented in rows and columns, and you can also apply different types of mathematical or arithmetic functions, various string-based functions on the data that you represent in a tabular format in Excel. Okay, it's very simple explanation of how you can type data and how you can use data in Excel. Next, you have the organization chart. FRD, we will see how to create the FRD document in the next session. For now, we will see how to, I'm just thinking. Okay, we will finish the organization chart. The remaining ones we will see in the next session. Organization chart is very easy. The reason I'm going to do this today is because you've already learned the XML structure and the tree view structure, right? So organization chart is going to be very much similar to that. Open the organization chart. In the organization chart, it also has a tree view structure, but this is mainly meant for representing your organization structure or your department structure, business unit structure, process structure, project structure, right? Who's going to head, who's going to be at the second level, third level, fourth level, fifth level, because you must know what is the structure of your department or a project or a business unit or your organization. In your company notice board or in your company magazine, you may have to represent the organization structure. So at that time, using the organization chart diagram and Visio will surely help you create a very good organization chart. So we'll see how to create this. It's very easy to create. Open an instance of Visio. Click on create, page width. Okay, save this. So it's called an organization chart. And under business, you have the organization chart. Organization chart are of two types. One is belt chart and another one is a notch chart. In belt and notch, only the representations differ. I will show you both. In a belt, the representation is going to be like this. In notch, the representation is going to be like this. That's the only difference. You can choose between these two. I always prefer using the belt chart. So I'm going to right click and close the notch. Belt, I've selected the belt organization chart shapes. Click on design. Observe. You have to set the color. The color should be standard color as defined by Visio. Click on this. Click on the drop down. Second shape. Again click on drop down. Again second shape. Back to home. That's all. So the colors are now defined. First let us add the top executive belt, which is CEO of the company. CEO Mark Thompson. So first you have to define the title. Next is the name. Mark Thompson. The next is you have to define another executive belt. Head of BU. So you know how to define the executive belt. Executive belt is meant for people starting from directors. Okay. Senior managers come under the manager category. Executives start from director, vice president, president, CEO, head of the business unit. So they are all top level or top management people. All top management people should be represented using the executive belt or the green color one. Head of BU, HR. So that's the business process, business unit we are talking about. And the name of the executive. Next, you have to define the manager belts. So under the head of business unit, you have the managers. Manager, recruitment, give the name. Manager, onboarding, give the name. Okay. The next part is add a lead recruiter. Lead recruitment. Give the name. Add another lead onboarding. Specify the name. Matthew. Next, under this lead recruitment, you have two contract HRs. Contractors are consultants, right? They are external to the company. They are not permanent employees of the company. Contractor, HR recruiter, 1. Give the name. Contractor, tractor, HR recruiter, 2. Specify the name. So they are external to your organization. They are not part of your organization. They are employees of some other company but working for your company. So you should always give a line color. The line color is going to be red because they are not part of your organization, correct? So the border should be in red color. Next, you have consultants. They are either project managers or software implementers. So they are also external consultant recruitment. Name is going to be Emma. Okay. Next you have new managers to be hired. So who are they? They are to be hired, vacancy belt. So you have to use the vacancy belt. So in the vacancy belt, you have to be hired manager, to be hired manager, manager, shared services. Okay. So they want to be permanent employees of your company. So you can have a blue border. To be hired assistant manager, assistant manager shared services, right? Under lead onboarding, you have the senior onboarding specialist who's going to be, this is an assistant role, senior onboarding specialist. Okay, name. It's so easy to place one below the other. So under the senior onboarding, so is a permanent employee of the company. So you can increase the border blue color and slightly increase the width of the border, right? Next, under this you have other levels. Junior onboarding specialist and name. So next is going to be a junior onboarding specialist. How many ever specialists you have? So onboarding means getting the employee on board, joining, induction process, document verification, all that. Okay. Junior onboarding specialist. specialist 3, name 3 is a junior onboarding specialist 2. Okay, that's all. So with this, we have added the required number of shapes. All you have to do now is add a connector. Connectors are very easy here. Just drag and drop. From the same point, you should click outside somewhere and then add a connector from the same point. I've already told this to you. Add a connector. Add a connector. Okay, if you think the spacing should be adjusted, you can do that so that it looks even, these two spacing. Click on the connector. Okay, now reduce the size of the diagram. Reduce the zoom. How am I reducing or increasing zoom? Hold the control key and your mouse scroll. So that will help zoom or reduce the zoom. So now you can also click on view, fit to window and see. You can adjust the spacing. Click on page width, increase the page width. Now we have to add click on the pointer tool. And give a date. Right? You have options here to do this. So you can add the title, company name and department name will come up. Then add the date and time. The system date and time will be captured. So that's how this information, or you can add a text box and you can type it. Either way, it is correct to do. Finally, keep it such a way that you're in center of the diagram. Save the diagram. Right? This is how the diagram is going to look. So you can save this diagram. Generally, you have to save this diagram in a PDF format. So this should be saved in a PDF format or an image format. That is also correct to do. So if you put it in the image format, you can see what type of an image gets. Just click on OK. Don't make any changes. Image will not open automatically. You have to go to that folder and open where you have saved it. Organization chart PNG. This is an image file. Perfect. Right? So this is what you need. And once you give this, they will take a printout and put it on the company magazine or the notice board or wherever they want to display. Very, very important to create an organization structure whenever a new project team is formed or whenever the organization restructuring happens. Wherever needed, when you have to represent something in a hierarchical and a structural format, you have to use the organization chart to do that. Okay. So we have discussed a number of topics today. We have seen the DFT diagram, DFMD diagram, XML structure, tree view flowchart, user stories, process mapping, data mapping, table design and organization chart. In the next session, we will complete the BA techniques. We just have the FRD, RACI matrix and RTM will get over within 10-15 minutes. Each of these are very important techniques. RTM and RACI matrix, we'll start that fresh in the next session. These are very much important, and it is in parallel to your functional requirements. When you're talking about the functional requirements, you must know what is RTM and how you create a RACI matrix to trace the responsibility, accountability, consult and inform activities within each of the functionality of the system relating to the activity to be performed and the role involved. That's the RACI matrix. In RTM, you have requirement traceability matrix. For each and every functionality of the system, you need a BR, a business requirement. For each of the functionality of the system, you need a test case to be written in the testing. So how that is achieved, right? So the next three topics, functional requirement document, RACI matrix and requirement traceability matrix, it all talks about the functionality of the system and it goes together. So we will see that in the next session. And then we will move on to business analysis perspective and process concepts. We will try to cover as much as possible in the business analysis perspectives and process concepts. Then we will move on to the database concepts and tools and technologies. Okay. That's all from my end for today. As planned, we have completed up to organization chart. Functional part of the system, we'll do it fresh in the next session. Do you have any questions for me? I'm going to post assignment questions. I want you to please attempt all the assignment questions. I've been giving the scores to Mr. Sunil. Your placement activities will start very soon because we have another 3 set of topics to be completed. So once that is done, I want you to be very much thorough with the topics that you're learning. Right? If you complete your assignment questions and submit it on time, it will be easier for me to evaluate your understanding so that you wouldn't have to struggle with the placement. Once you clear the mock interview, there are a number of companies which have been participating, which have been approaching techies, and we have urgent requirements for BA role. So if you're very much thorough with the concepts that you learn, so understanding what is being taught to you in the session is important, and attempting the assignment is equally important. Only then you will get good hands-on with the concepts that you are learning so that you can clear the mock interview at the earliest and get placed. Right? Sunil is taking care of the placement services, as you know, and all your attendance details and your assignment evaluations, the scores given to you have been shared with Sunil to see your preparedness to take up the mock-up interview, the mock interview with me, screening, and then the placement with the client. So make the best use of this opportunity. You've taken up this course. So get good hands-on and take a good career path by starting as a business analyst. Okay, good. So if there are no more questions, let's meet in the next session with more number of topics. There's going to be a change in the next schedule. Please contact Mr. Sunil for your program schedule. So that's what he has informed me, that there's going to be a change from his end. So you please contact him to find out when is the next schedule and what is the day you have to join the session. Thank you all. You have a good day and have a good weekend ahead. Bye.